Well, making our election sure, right? That's the theme. No, a lot of people are asking themselves whether they are called, right? Whether they are elected. And I wonder whether God only calls or elects some and leaves by the side others. What do you think? Do you think God is calling all of us?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
God is calling all of us. Not to do the same thing, but everybody has a role to play, right? In God's church. Everybody has something to do. Everybody is called for something. And the only reason we do not fulfill our calling is not because God hasn't called us, it's because we do not answer that call, right? I was 6 years old when I first got a call from God. I didn't know it was from God, but it was when my grandparents were very happy when grandchildren were coming over for vacation until they would find out that I was going. Right? They were happy until they knew I was among the cousins going to their house. And when I was 6 years old, I remember that they asked me, "Why aren't you normal like everybody else?" Because every time I would go out of the property, somebody would come and say something bad about me. So they were so tired. And when they asked me, "Why aren't you normal like everybody else?" I thought as a little child, oh, that's right, why am I not normal? No, I asked myself, well, I need to change, right? I need to be different, I thought. And the only reason I know I was 6, it's because of other events that took place at the same time. It wasn't because of this, but there were so many things taking place. It was in 1980, and I knew that for a fact. So I was 6 years old when I first thought that I needed a change. I needed to repent. Can you imagine? But because there were no, I wasn't surrounded by the most favorable circumstances in life, and the most favorable persons, I was not educated on how I can make a change, how I can give my heart to the Lord. So, time went by, my situation worsened instead of becoming better. And when I was 18 years old, I heard God's call again. I had been arrested a few times, not taken to jail, but arrested by the local police, right? Because of some of the things that I had done.
Not for the Sabbath, though.
Not for Sabbath. I wasn't persecuted for the truth, no. I was persecuted because I was fighting. I was fighting almost every day. And I got to the point of fighting with the police. So anyway, my mom would come and rescue me. So I was a troublemaker since I was very little. I was... How old is he? 5.
6 in December.
Okay, I was almost your age. I mean, but don't do this at home, okay? So I was a troublemaker, and at night I couldn't sleep anymore. I was thinking about my life. What am I going to do with it? Because I had heard teachers say that, and parents and neighbors, everybody said that I would end my life in prison because of the things I was doing. So it was one night, I was 18. I don't know, can you post a picture?
Yeah. You have an iPhone?
So,
yeah,
I can send it to you.
Could connect it to
Okay. I'll show you a picture of me when I was 18. So when I was this age, I couldn't sleep anymore because I had so many enemies. I had to, that's me. That's me when I was 18. That's me right there. And that's me also. I don't know if you can recognize me, but soccer was the last sport I left. Yeah. So anyway, when I was that age, in the middle of fighting and everything, I heard God's call again at 2 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't sleep, and He put in my mind that I needed a change. Just like when I was 6 years old. Same call. I needed a change. What do I do? How do I change? Because I have tried before, like from smoking and alcohol, I went into sports. I thought I became better. The family was really happy, but then I got into fighting. So it wasn't good at all. So one night I heard the call that I needed a change. I didn't know how to change. And I remember that at the age of 6, and this is why I remember I was 6, because it was then when my grandparents had decided to become Adventists, right? And they, in 1980, they gave my parents a small Bible. And on the way to the train station, my parents said, "Oh, we forgot our Bible." And they sent me back to bring the Bible. So I went running, you know, I was fast like you know. I went running, got the Bible, and my grandparents said, "Please hide the Bible because you are not allowed to have a Bible back in the day in the communist country," right? So I hid it under my jacket and I ran after my parents. So 12 years had to go by until I remembered that somebody told me that the Bible can change lives. And so I went out of the bed and started looking for that Bible that I hadn't seen for 12 years. I had seen it, actually, because my brother, before he passed away, he was carrying it with him all the time, but that's all I saw of the Bible, right? So now at the age of 18, I remembered about the Bible. I came out of my bed and I started looking for it. And I found it somewhere, you know, behind other books. It was dusty. So I started reading, and I mentioned in the Sabbath school lesson how the Bible changed my life, right? How I was reading and then go to the disco bar, and I wasn't feeling the same. I was looking at everybody else and said, "Man, is that how I look like when I dance?" I wasn't liking and I had invested a lot in learning how to dance, you know. And they made a circle around me because I was jumping and falling in the split, you know, like the one you saw in the picture. So they loved that, you know. I was jumping really high. So anyway, God started changing my life. And I don't have time to tell all my story, you know, but I just wanted to say that when I was actually converted, I found out from the brethren from our church that they had prayed for me for 30 years. 30 years. You know, in Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 5, it says, "Before I have formed thee in the belly, I sanctified you. And I have set you apart to do what? To be a prophet to the nations." When was Jeremiah anointed to be a prophet? When was he anointed? When was he called? Before he was born, right? Before he was born. Now when God called him, that was not actually the call. The call was before he was formed, right? But this was a confirmation of the fact that God had chosen him. And when was his election made sure? Was it when God anointed him? Was it when he was born? Was it when God called him? Or was it when he accepted the call? When was he sure? When he accepted, right? Because this expression, make your election sure, it means confirm your election, right? So God has called everybody, but not everybody is doing the right thing. Why? Because we don't accept the call. But everybody is called. When are we called? When are we set apart for a specific work? Before we are born. Each and every one of us. And the only reason we do not confirm our calling is because we believe that doing or being something else is more important or helps us advance in life faster than if we were really dedicated to the Lord. Right? I was called when I was 6. When did my calling become sure? 12 years later. When I accepted the call and I said, forget martial arts, forget boxing, forget soccer, and I went into canvassing. Right? And when my brethren said that they had prayed for me for 30 years, I was impressed. I mean, Jeremiah was anointed by God before he was born. The brethren started praying for me before I was born.
But they didn't know your name.
They didn't. They didn't. So they prayed 12 years before I was born and 18 years after I was born. That's how much prayer I needed to give my heart to the Lord. Yeah. They told me that 30 years before I gave my heart to the Lord, they had started praying because they had opened a shop, a photo shop in my town, and there was nobody Adventist or Reformed. So they prayed from the moment they opened the business, they prayed that at least one soul would give his heart to the Lord in that town. And I was the one. Yeah. They prayed and worked very hard, but it was impossible, seemingly, right, for anyone to accept the gospel there because my town is, it's a very small town. But it has 4 wine factories, right, in a small town. The town is known in the whole country as the mother of wine because they were making wine for export to France, fine wine. And if you knew where to get a wine, you could get it for free. The best wine, right? And I knew where it was. I knew how to get it when I was very small. I was actually supplying alcohol, for neighbors, and because I knew how to sneak in, right, and get it. So anyway, it was, it seemed impossible for anyone to accept the gospel there. So the brethren prayed for 30 years. People were drunk from morning till evening. How can you talk to people about the gospel, It's very hard. But I was the one they had prayed for. And praise the Lord that, took a lot of effort and, not missionary effort, but living up to God's calling for others to give their hearts to the Lord. And the first one was my mom, who was actually against me changing my religion at first. And then my friend, my best friend actually, who I was drinking with and fighting against when we were very small, and then he was part of my gang. So he got converted and got baptized. And my dad got baptized as well, and other friends of mine got baptized. And I realized that all it takes is for one to make his election sure. In any circle of influence, all it takes is for one to do so. And I just wanted to share an experience that impressed me. It's one of the greatest experiences I've had, and that is that somebody's heart was won for the Lord before I even knew about the Bible, right? And that is when I was in high school. A short guy came. He was 9th grade. I was probably 11th grade or 10th grade. So he came into the high school, and because he was small, everybody was mocking him. Everybody was slapping him, and stuff like that, like bullying him, right? So I looked at him, and I was filled with sympathy, for him, and pity. So one day I took him by hand. I went into every classroom and I said, you see this guy, look well at him, because if you ever touch him again, you will have to deal with me. So, well, he didn't have any problem anymore. So now I got converted, like a couple of years later, I got converted. And I went back to my high school to tell my teachers about my conversion, to tell them my story, right? Because everybody knew me. I mean, the first day of high school, the principal of the high school, the director, called me out in front of everybody and told me, I will expel you. Because the first day of high school, I beat someone up so badly that, anyway, very badly, right? So he reported, and he called me out in front of everybody. The first day, the first day of school, they call everybody in a, how do you say it?
Square.
In a square, and they, inform everybody about everything. So he called me right there and said, I will expel you. So, and every year, I was studying enough. I was going to school enough just so I would pass to the next level, to the next grade. And I had good enough grades except for behavior. And on behavior is where they couldn't pass me. The teachers were meeting and speaking among themselves, what do we do with him? What do we do with Finaru? So they said, no, there is no way, his behavior is terrible, we cannot pass him to the next grade. And then somebody would say, wait a minute, if we don't pass him, he will stay here one more year. Oh, okay, then pass. So that was the only way I would pass to the next grade, So I went back to the high school. I was actually in a missionary school. I went back, and I was dressed in a suit, Before that, I never wore a suit. I was always dressed in sport clothes. And I go there, I had a long jacket, with a nice briefcase. So I was walking through the alley of the high school, and it was right at break time when teachers were coming from one building to another, and they all looked and stopped on the top of the staircase and said, is that Finaru? No, cannot be. It walks like him. Doesn't look like him. He's not dressed like him. So when I get close, they say, Finaru? Yes. What happened? Well, I started saying, and they said, no, it looks like, sounds like a really good story. Let's go into, how do you call this place where the teachers meet?
Meeting a meeting in teachers' lounge.
Like the teachers, yeah. Teachers, Cancellaria, teachers' lounge, right? They all gathered together to listen to the story. So I started telling them how the Lord changed my life and how it was different. And I said, thank you so much for passing me your path. I apologized, I asked forgiveness for the trouble I had given. They started crying, the teachers started crying and crying. And so there was no class anymore. They were all listening to my story. And when there is no class, when the teachers don't go to class, the children are very noisy. So the director heard so much noise during class hours. So he said, what's going on? So he came to the, to the teacher's lounge, and he just stormed in, and when he saw me, he was like, he couldn't believe it. I was in the middle of everybody telling them stories, and he stayed there until I finished my story. When I came out of the lounge, the teachers went to classes, but some of them came to me privately and said, please, come visit. Come visit me so you can tell me more about it. It was so impressive. My favorite teacher who would never go to class without me. I was playing soccer in the yard, and she would just stand there in front of the door, and she would call me, Finaru, please come to class. And I would say, no, one more, let me finish this and I'll come. And she would sit there and call me again and again. One more. She would not go to class without me. That's how much she loved me, even though I was a troublemaker. And she was the one who came and said, please come. So when I went back to Romania, about 6 years ago, I took a bouquet of flowers and I went and visited her after so many years. But as I was going back on the alley of the high school, I hear somebody run after me. I turned around and it was this small boy that I defended. He came to me and said, how are you? What are you doing? So I said, well, I'm reading the Bible. Oh, you have a Bible? Yes. So I showed him the Bible. He said, I want the Bible. He was being prepared by the priest, by the Orthodox priest, to become a priest. But he had never been given a Bible, right? So I said, I will give you a Bible. So when I came back, another time I brought a Bible. And then my mom said, he is looking for you. He is looking for you. He comes. So when I went again for a vacation, I went and visited him. He came to church and he got baptized. Yeah. But the way was prepared when? Before even I was converted. And he got baptized. He got married. He had a child. And he passed away. But he passed away, in good terms with the Lord. So I think the most memorable conversions that God has worked through my life were before I was an official Bible worker for the church. It was before I went to the missionary school. It was before I knew anything from the Bible. It was when all I knew was what the Lord had done for me and how He had mercy on me. Remember the story of the man possessed by demons? When he wanted to go with Jesus, and Jesus said, no. It's not important for you to be with me. What's important is for me to be with you, right? And he said, go back home and tell everybody what? Revelation 11, Revelation 13, what did he say? Daniel 11, what did he say? Go and tell them what? What God has done for you and how He had mercy on you. That's all. So he went, and before he said anything, people got converted. They got impressed because he was dressed differently, right? Just like me, when I was walking on that aisle, on the alley of the high school, the teachers were like, "Oh, is that him? Cannot be, might be. Oh, it's him." What happened, right? What happened? And what do you say? What do you say? It's what God has done for me, right? Amen. And how He had mercy on me. So, brethren, young people, make your election sure. So, Gabriel, what do you want to do with your life? It's between me and God. Amen.